We need water near the closest source.
Show off. I could have just peed on it.
Aquaman is the second DCEU film to be rated at least fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, aka the DCEU's sworn enemy. Even though its score isn't super high, and if you ask me, it's rated way too low, it is still certified fresh, which no longer makes Wonder Woman the lone DCEU film to be the only non-rotten DCEU film. This film also dives, pun intended, audiences into a new world of DC, this time being Atlantis. Despite the DCU's overall track record, something they've always gotten perfectly is capturing the essence of each character's own world, like Gotham City for Batman, Themyscira for Wonder Woman, Krypton for Superman. Sort of. The whole film was basically 90% CGI the entire time, and every part of it looked absolutely beautiful. So now comes the question. How exactly does this change the future of the DCEU? Well, first off, it delivers a strong villain, which in this case is King Orm, aka Ocean Master, played by Patrick Wilson, who, despite almost every other DCEU villain, actually lived through the entirety of the film and will most likely return, and by that I mean most definitely.
Is the elephant heavy? I'm coming back, baby.
And since the DCU has quite the villain shortage, not counting Suicide Squad because most of that team is either dead or way too depowered to even go head-to-head against even one Justice League member.
I'm known to be quite vexing, I'm just forewarning you.
If the DCU is supposedly moving towards a Legion of Doom storyline,
shouldn't we have a league of our own?
the Justice League is going to need some villains to fight that, you know, are actually alive. Then again, you could bring them back from the dead and do the Black Knight storyline, which frankly would be really awesome. Speaking of Justice League, Aquaman helps clean up the stain that was the Justice League movie by improving, and most cases completely reworking some major weak points, including, but not limited to, Arthur, Mira, Arthur's powers, Mira's powers, the introduction to Atlantis, Arthur and Mira's relationship, his terrible CGI costumes. Do I really need to continue? It also created a new, lovable, and actually developed character, which helps with making a new leading member of the DCEU, especially with the possibility of Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill stepping down from their respective DCEU roles as Batman and Superman. And the future isn't looking too optimistic for either Cavill or Affleck to return anytime soon, at least in the near future, along with Ray Fisher's Cyborg. Considering the Cyborg solo film hasn't been mentioned in ages, I would love to see Ray Fisher return into the DCEU somehow. It's just not very likely we will be seeing Cyborg in the future. This is the first film to be released under the DCEU Warner Bros. Shakeup, which occurred almost immediately after Justice League was released, and the numbers were coming in that it wasn't profiting well at the box office. Like it all. If the DCEU still wanted to be a thing, Aquaman pretty much had no choice but to do well. And it has been doing incredibly well, as already at the time I'm recording this, it has passed both Justice League and Suicide Squad worldwide at the box office, and quite literally is blowing past the controversially received at best past of the DCEU. Thanks to the perfect casting of Jason Momoa as Aquaman, Amber Heard being a literal goddess as Mira, and the fantastic job that James Wan did directing, Aquaman is a film that truly is something to be seen as soon and as many times as one possibly can, and it should seriously be studied from a VFX standpoint. So as I said, Aquaman is a fantastic film, seriously needs to be studied. Unfortunately, as great as it is creating its own world, that's pretty much the only place this story can exist in. It doesn't contribute to the broader world of the DCEU in really any major way, especially since this film takes place post-Justice League. And even though there are many parts I would more than rather forget about that movie, the movie still happened. It isn't going away. And Aquaman does little to acknowledge it besides a quick line about Steppenwolf from Mira, and considering that Orm's warning wave took place on such a global scale, where was the rest of the league? And also, the end credit scene. It didn't contribute much to the future of the DCEU, especially for an end credit scene. Besides Black Manta being teased to be the next villain in the Aquaman sequel, which to be honest, we all saw coming. And when he was recovering in that shack, I was hoping to see Lex Luthor walk in at some point, or spin around in a super evil chair all Darth Sidious style. It would make sense because Lex is recruiting for the Legion of Doom. Roll the clip again.
Shouldn't we have a league of our own?
So it would make sense for him to recruit Black Manta, considering how much he hates Arthur and would literally stop at nothing to kill him. That sounds like someone Lex would really want on his side. But instead, we're met with Randall Park's character, who's like super obsessed on discovering Atlantis because nobody believes him on the fact that it actually exists. While I'm excited to see where this will go, it doesn't really contribute to the DCEU in a major way for the time being. So whenever I've talked about the negative side of things, I've never really gone back to refute those claims before, but honestly, I think Aquaman is more than deserving of it, so I'm gonna do it anyway. When James Wan set out and signed on for this project, he said from the beginning that he wanted to make a mostly, if not all, standalone movie, and considering how much of an amazing filmmaker he is, it's pretty easy to understand and appreciate his mentality, especially when we see the final product of what he set out to create. Plus, since before Aquaman, the DCEU was compiled of a standalone movie, a crossover movie, a team movie that came before the main team movie of the franchise, another solo movie, then finally a team movie for the main team of the franchise, yet introducing 3 of its main characters we didn't get to see beforehand, developed in their respective solo movies of their own before this movie. Basically what I'm saying here, the DCEU solo to crossover - team movie ratio was 2 to 3. Great for hype, but not so much for the development of the characters this hype is supposed to be built around. Aquaman needed to be partially apart from the DCEU in most ways, yet still be connected and keep it a good balance. Audiences were tired of the current state of the DCEU, yet still needed to see it continue somehow, and Aquaman did this perfectly. It's a movie that had a difficult point to prove from the start besides just being a good film, that the DCEU was still a property to go see and that the average moviegoer should still care about, be invested in. And it accomplished its mission and more. It wasn't just an average comic book film with explosions strewn throughout the entire thing. I'm looking at you, Transformers! From the cinematography, to the story, the characters, the visual effects, you could just feel every ounce of passion that was poured into this film. And that's the same passion we should all remember when we think about what gets us so excited for these movies in the first place. What keeps us coming back? And that's a question I think every comic fan and moviegoer should answer for themselves. Because it's a different answer for all of us. And it's that passion that does keep us coming back. Theorizing, counting down the minutes for the trailers, making Marvel and DC fans be at each other's throats way more times than they should be. Come on guys, you know who you are. Having us make sure we see every movie opening weekend, and even encouraging a fanboy like me with a camera and some editing software to make a video to ask these questions and share his opinion that literally nobody is asking for. And making sure that we do come back as we excitingly wait for the next chapter, so we can see and witness how these beloved characters we've cherished even since childhood for some people grow and evolve in the ever-expanding stories that we absolutely can't wait to see them in next.
But what could be greater than a king?
A hero.